Welcome back, Algebra 1. Hope you guys had a nice long weekend. So let's start on lesson 8.6 today. This is the first of our two lessons for this week, and we're going to talk about factoring quadratic trinomials. Now that's a lot of big words, but we do know most of those words, right? We know what factoring is, right? If you factor 20, you know its factors are 1 times 20, or 2 times 10, or 4 times 5. And if you factor x squared, we know it's x times x. So we've been doing a lot of factoring recently. Trinomials, we know what a trinomial is. Here's an example, right? It's a type of number that has 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. They are not like terms, so they can't combine. So we might have plus or minus and plus or minus, so that we have 3 different pieces. The new thing today is quadratic. And we already know about quadratics, we just maybe have not called them that yet. So quadratics are numbers that have a squared variable in them, right? So x squared, or y squared, or q squared, z squared. Anything that has a squared in it, a squared variable, is going to be some type of quadratic. And a quadratic, when you graph them, so we know lines, right? If we have y equals 2x, we know that's just some kind of straight line, right? It might look like this. That might be y equals 2x. But what if I talk about a quadratic like y equals x squared? Okay. Y equals x squared, if I graph that, it looks like this. So quadratics have very different graphs. They're very different kind of equations or numbers. Okay. So that's a little bit about a quadratic, and here's an example of how we like to talk about quadratic numbers, or quadratic terms, quadratic trinomials. This is the standard way that we write them. We put the x squared thing first, the x squared term, then the x term, then the number term, the constant term. So this looks like a lot of stuff, but A, B, and C, when you see it in a real quadratic, they will just be numbers. So for example, we just name them A, B, C, but they might be, you might have something like 3x squared plus 4x minus 10. I don't know. Okay? So in this problem, or in this quadratic, we would say that A equals what? Our A number is 3. B is blue. Our B number is 4. And our C number is negative 10. Right? Remember, it's to keep the negative with it. Same with if A or B is negative, you have to remember that they're negative. Okay? Well, stepping on cords here. Let's fix that up. Negative 10. So A, B, and C are just the names that we give for the numbers that will be there. Right? We're not really going to have an A, a B, and a C. We're going to have some numbers that we name A number, B number, C number. Okay? That will help us when we're going to go to factor these to find out what x equals. Okay? This is a good set of notes. This is our standard notation for a quadratic, standard format. Then we got to remember that A, B, and C are going to be numbers. We're not going to literally write A, B, C. We're going to have some numbers there, like this example. Okay? All right. So on the next thing we want to talk about is that we remember why we're going to factor these and what is factoring. So we've done examples like something like this where we factor some kind of quadratic. We didn't call them quadratics every time. They might be bigger than quadratics, right? They might have had x cubed or x to the fourth, but we would factor the polynomial and we would get something times something. And last lesson, we learned the really powerful tool called the zero product property. And that tool says if you multiply if your answer to a multiplication problem is 0, if that's your answer is 0, one of these two things, at least one of them, has to be 0. Because the only way we can multiply to get to 0 is some number times 0 or 0 times a number. So if your answer is 0, the zero product property says one of your factors has to be 0 also. We don't know which one, but it lets us pick and do it each way. So the secret is we have our polynomial. Today we're going to be doing trinomials specifically. We factor it, and we get our factors. A quadratic trinomial is going to have 2 factors only. So we might get 2 factors. We will get 2 factors. And we can say, if those both equal 0, we can solve to find out the answers. Now this problem only had one answer. I solved just the left side, the left factor equals 0 because of the zero product property. I solved it and I found out if that's true, x is -1. Then I did the same thing with the right factor. If that side was 0 instead, I would get the same answer. So this one only had one answer, which was -1. Okay? So there's only one number that x could be. Sometimes x can be 2 numbers, so that's going to be something to look for. But we would get 2 different numbers this way. So that's what we're going to do when we already have the factors finished. But how do we factor most of these different trinomials? How do we factor a lot of quadratic trinomials? So that's what we're going to do today, is learn how to factor a lot of different kinds, a lot of one kind of quadratic trinomial. And once we factor them, so they'll be on the next board. Once we do this factoring, we know how to solve with the zero product property. But let's move on and do some examples. So I'm going to talk about the way to factor quadratic trinomials. It's called, the way I'm going to teach you today is the diamond factoring method. Okay? There is a different way, there are many different ways of thinking about how to factor these. In the assignment pages, there's a different way. So if this way is difficult for you, you can read through what the assignment says and try their way. They're very similar, right? You're getting the same steps. I just like having this diamond to put my numbers into. It helps me out. So here's how the diamond works. I'm going to pull up one example. This is going to be number 1 from your page. Okay? So this is number 1 from the independent practice, and it is x squared plus 4x plus 3. Yeah. Plus 4x plus 3. Okay. So here's what we do first. We want to find out what B and C are. So look, A, there's no number here in the front. That would be the number we have for A. If nothing's there, it's a 1. If it's a 1, we don't worry about it for our diamond. Okay? So we don't need the 1 in our diamond. Let's talk about B. Our B number is 4. Okay. And let's talk about C. Our C number is 3, not 1. Okay, good start. So here's how the diamond goes. We put our C number on top. So that's a 3. And we put our B number on the bottom, which is a 4. Okay. Now I'm going to put my little labels. So the diamond always works the same way, but with different numbers. We put our C number on top, our B number on the bottom, and then we need to start. We want this side to be, hold on. We need factors here, a factor, and a factor. So the way we find our factors is we need the factors of 3, and we have to pick the factors of 3 that will add together or subtract together to get 4. So that sounds like a lot. Let's see. We need to we need to find numbers that multiply to make 3 and add or subtract to make 4. Now that's a lot of words to just say, find the factors of 3. Okay, so what are the factors of 3? Well, luckily, it only has one pair. 3 times 1. Okay? Now, we got to check. If we go over here and check, does 3... So we found out they multiply together to make the top number. 3 times 1 equals 3. Good. Now we need to see if they add together. 3 plus 1 equals 4. So good. They add together to make the bottom number. That means that this is the correct numbers. Those are the correct numbers we want, and they go in our side boxes. A positive 3 and a positive 1. Just like we found from our factors. So what you need to find is factors that multiply to the top number and add to the bottom number. When you find that pair, oh no, my diamond. When you find that pair of numbers that does both of those things, they go in the side boxes of our diamond. Okay? Now, let me just freeze this. Okay. All right. When we have our side boxes, we're ready to factor. Well, we know our factors. That means we do x plus the left side. Well, x and the left side. X plus 3. That's in one parentheses. Let me move it up a little bit. X plus 3. And our other parentheses is x with the second number, which is a 1, a positive 1. And we make it equal 0. That's our big trick, remember? Our big power that we have is making them equal 0. When they equal 0, we can split them up and get our 2 answers. Or potentially 2 answers. So we've got orange side, which is going to be x plus 3 equals 0. And we've got our pink side, pink factor, x plus 1 equals 0. So we make each factor, each parentheses, equal 0 by itself. And now we can solve them. So on this side we do minus 3, and we get x equals -3. On the pink factor, we do -1, -1, and we get x equals -1. We got two different answers. Uh-oh. No, that's okay. We can have, because it's x squared in our starting trinomial, we can have two answers. We usually have two answers, actually. So our answers are that x could equal -3 or -1. Those are both correct answers. And that's how we solve with the diamond factoring. Okay? So it looks like a lot of steps, but each step is something we already know how to do. So the real thing you need to learn this lesson is practicing it and trying each step slowly, right? We already know how to find B and C. We can put them in our boxes. We know how to factor numbers. We know how to add numbers together. Then once we have our sides that work, the factors that also added to the bottom, then we can make them into factors like this with the parentheses and make two nice and easy algebra problems to get our two answers. So it's a lot of steps, but we know all the steps. All right, I'm going to go through some more practice ones. These are the problems that are labeled in red on your assignment, which means I will do them here today. So you have examples when you go work on your own. Number 3 on your page is r squared minus 3r plus 2. Okay. B is blue. That's our B number, that -3. And C number is +2. Okay. So C goes on top, which is 2. B goes on the bottom, which is -3. So C on top, B on bottom. Now we go for some factors. I didn't need to erase factors. I could have left the word there. So now we need some factors. What times what is 2? Well, 1 times 2. All right. Does 1, now we try to see if they add up, right? 1 plus 2 equals 3. Is that right? But we need -3. Well, there is another set of factors for 2. That's -1 times -2, right? Negative times a negative makes a positive. 1 and 2 is 2. So now let's check. -1 plus -2. That, if you check it, even on your calculator, is -3. So this is the correct pair. So one side's going to be -1, and the other side is going to be -2. Okay? Now we make our factors. Make our parentheses. We're going to have 2 parentheses empty, and we're going to make it equal 0. The first one is x and the left number, -1. And then the second one is x and the right number. Okay. This will be our pink factors, and this will be our orange factor. So let's do orange real quick. We take orange, we take one of our factors like this, and we do that factor, x minus 1, equals 0. Solve it, so plus 1, plus 1. We get x equals 1. Okay, now let's try the pink side. We have x minus 2 equals 0. Solve it, so plus 2, plus 2. These are some nice, easy algebra problems. Once we get to this step, we get x equals 2. So, what are our two answers? Remember, we can have two answers. So our answers are that x equals 1 and it equals 2. There are two answers. Okay, so sometimes, if you notice, when b is negative, we might have to have some negative factors. Okay, in this case, we had to have two negative factors so that they would add up to a negative number while still multiplying to a positive number. So it might be a little tricky, but remember you can do negatives. And remember you can check your factors on your calculator. Okay. Next one. Oh, I erased the word factors again. I didn't need to do that. All right, this one is number 5 on your assignments page, and it is x squared minus 4x minus 21. All right, B for blue. So our B number is that -4, and C is red. So our C number is that -21. C goes on top, -21. B goes on the bottom, -4. And now it's time for our factors. Maybe this time I won't erase it. Okay, what are the factors of -21? Well, if this is a negative number, each time we do a factor pair, one of our factors has to be negative. Well, so I know -1 times 21. That's true. But let's see, can I do -1 plus 21 equals -4? No. Okay, so moving on. What's another factor? -3 times 7. Right? 3 times 7 is 21, and it's negative. That works. Now let's try it. -3 plus 7 instead. Do we get -4? No. If you put that in your calculator, you'll get +4. But we're close, right? -4 and +4, they share some properties. So let's try, instead of -3, let's do +3 and -7. That still multiplies to -21. Good. Then we can check. 3 plus -7. That does equal -4. So this pair worked. Right? They multiply to the top number and they add up to the bottom number. Perfect. So our two numbers that worked were 3 and -7. Put them in our boxes. And then we can start filling in our factors. We always are going to have 2 parentheses equals 0, right? The first parentheses is x and the first number. Now that's a +3, right? So it's going to be +3. Then the second parentheses is x And our second number, -7, so -7. Boom. Okay, we've got our orange and our pink. So factor 1 and factor 2. And we can set them up. X plus 3 equals 0. So we solve it -3, -3, not double minus. X equals -3. Okay. Then our pink side, we do our factor, the x minus 7 equals 0 by itself, and start solving. So we add 7 on both sides, and we get x equals 7. So we have our two answers now. X equals -3 and 7. So if you notice, it's good to check these ones, right? To check with our parentheses. But if you notice, our answers are just the opposite of our factors here, right? We had 3 and the answer was -3. We had a -7 in the diamond and our X answer was +7. That's a good thing to notice. Some good patterns in math that might save you some time. Okay, so math is just a big pattern, yeah. And if you can figure out the patterns, you can save a lot of time. All right. Let's move on to the next one. This is going to be number 9. And it is 9 minus 10x plus x squared. Oh, we can't jump right in and just pick this is B and this is C. We need to put it in order first. So our x squared comes first. X squared. Then our x term, which is -10x minus 10x. Then our constant number, which is just, is that a +9 or -9? It's +9, so it's +9 at the end. Okay, I can't erase that without erasing everything. Now we have it in x squared, x number order. So now we can do blue for B and red for C. All right, C number goes on top. It's a 9. B number goes on the bottom, -10. This time I did not erase the word factors, so we know what's next. We need the factors of 9. Well, I know 1 times 9. Okay. Let's see. If I do 1 plus 9, do I get 10? I get 10, which is not -10. I'm looking for -10 over here, right? So it's not this one. Okay, what about 3 times 3? Not a good times. 3 times 3. Okay, that's 9, but what about 3 plus 3? That equals 9, which is not -10. We want -10 when we add them up. But remember, if one of the numbers, if our C or our B is negative, we're going to need some negative numbers. And for negative factors of a +9, I need both of them to be negative. So let me try -1. -1 times -9. Okay, 1 times 9 is 9, and 2 negatives multiplying means it's a positive answer. So that's good. Now we add them up. So in my calculator, -1 plus -9 equals -10. Good. we did it. So this one worked because it matched what we were looking for. It matched our B number. All right, so our two factors were -1 and -9. Now, what was the pattern we saw in the last problem? Oh, yeah. When we do our factoring, we do x minus 1. That's a bad minus again. X minus 1 in one parentheses and x minus 9 in the other parentheses. Make them equal 0. We can make one orange, make one pink, solve two algebra problems. The answer we're going to get will be the opposite of these two numbers, which will be x equals not -1, but 1, not -9, but 9. Okay? So you can do all the steps if you want to make sure, right? If it's a very difficult problem, do your steps. If it's an easy problem and you trust your pattern, if you trust your skills, we know the pattern now. All right. Okay, I've got 3 more to do. That's a lot. Not that bad. All right, this is number 11. So I'll go quick on these. Remember, you can pause the video. You can come to class times to ask questions. All of the above. Okay, first I'm going to just check this is in order. A squared A number. So I can already say that's B. And I can already say that's C. So C is -9. And B is 8, +8. Okay, time to factor. Factors of -9. If it's a -9, it could be -1 times 9. Let me check if that adds up to 8. -1 plus 9 equals 8. Oh, all right. Perfect. We got our correct factors in the first try. Sometimes it takes us 3 tries, 4 tries, 5 tries, but this time I got them right. Nice. So my two factors are -1 and 9. That looks like a Q, but it's a 9. There. Okay. Now we can do our two factors. X and the first number. X and the second number. Second number is positive, so it's plus. And make them both equal 0. What are our answers going to be? 1 and -9. Now, if you said those answers already, just like on Blue's Clues, if you knew the answers when I asked, good job. If you forget why, remember, we can solve this problem. We can make this x minus 1 equals 0. And we can solve that to get 1. Same thing on this side. We could do x plus 9 equals 0 and solve it. But we learned that the pattern is whatever we get in these two boxes, our answers will be the opposite. So instead of -1, 1. Instead of +9, -9. That's what we have here. So once you know the pattern, you can save a little bit of time on these. Now, make sure you did all the other work correctly or your pattern's going to mess you up, but that's always true. All right, 2 more. Number 12. This one says y squared minus 7y minus 8. Okay, what time is it? Oh, I got a couple minutes. Okay. Blue for B. Red for C. C is -8. Okay. B is -7. Okay. Now we need to factor the -8. Okay, it's a negative number, so one of my factors needs to be negative. So I could try -1 times 8. When I add those up, I get -1 plus 8. And I want it to the answer to be -7, but I get +7 this time. That's close though. So instead of checking other factors, I'm going to check the same factors with the negative on the 8 instead. So what if I do 1 times -8? That's a multiply. Let me just write that again. 1 times -8. Okay, 1 times -8 is still -8. And if we add them up, 1 plus -8. If I do that in my head or on the calculator, I will get -7 indeed. And that is good. That is what we were looking for, right? It matches our B number. Okay, so our two factors were 1 and -8. I'm going to go one more step. I don't need to write my parentheses factors this time. I don't need to write x plus 1. I don't need to write x minus 8. I don't need to solve both of those. I know from my pattern it's going to be the opposite and the opposite. So x equals -1 and +8. Okay, so skipping some of the work when you know the pattern, it only works on these the ones we're doing today. In the future, there will be more complicated problems that you can't skip these steps. But it's good to know for the easy problems how you can skip up a little bit with the pattern, right? Once you understand the math, saving a little bit of time is nice. Okay. So the short answer is if you're stuck on any step in here, don't skip the step, right? Learn the step first so that you can guarantee you're doing it right when you do skip it later. So only skip steps when you understand them perfectly. All right, last one is m squared plus 9m plus 20. Okay. Blue for B. Red for my C. C goes on top. It's 20. Positive 20. B goes on the bottom. It's a positive 9. Very nice. No negatives in this one so far. Let's factor 20. Well, it's 1 times 20, which I'm pretty sure 1 plus 20 does not equal 9. Right? We need our addition problem to be 9, but it's not. Okay. Let's try 2 times 10. That's 20. 2 plus 10. Oh, that's not 9. Okay. 4 times 5. That's 20. 4 plus 5. That's 9. Good. All right, so our two factors were 4 and 5, which means our answer is -4 and -5. And we're done.